Hi, I'm Brad, certified financial planner and your retirement readiness coach, here today to talk to you about strategies to ensure that you never run out of money in retirement. Today we're going to touch on things like longevity and living expenses and inflation and what's the best way to invest for retirement and healthcare expenses and Social Security timing strategies. I mean, all the things that you need to master in order to ensure that you do not run out of money in potentially a 30-plus year retirement lifespan. At Seaside Wealth Management, we specialize in helping people not run out of money in retirement. And in order to do that, we have to build a retirement income plan that takes into account all the factors of a potentially 30-year retirement for people. And in order to do that, we have to make some assumptions, and there's a lot of variables that we have to think through. So today, I'm asking Matt some questions about how he approaches the variables and the assumptions that go into building a solid retirement income plan. And our goal is to help you, the audience, as you're starting to think through your retirement income plan and your financial plan, building that foundation for you. We're going to share with you how we do it here at Seaside and try to help coach and educate you so you can do it too. So Matt, with these assumptions that go into the plan, I mean, the first one, the really big one, is longevity. So people are living longer and longer these days. How do you think through longevity and really life expectancy for your clients?
Well, believe it or not, people are living longer. There's a 50% chance that one of you, if you're married, is going to live into your mid-90s. And actually, the studies say that every year that you're living, your life expectancy actually increases. So stay in your chair, but be careful. What we're projecting is that people are actually living until their hundreds for their plan.
So you're telling me you assume that people are going to live until age 100?
Age 100. And a fun fact for me, I think I told you before, I'm living until 114, and so that's what I'm projecting in my plan. I found out it's a million hours of life. But besides the point there, we're projecting out to age 100. And we get a couple of reactions when we say this to clients. Some of them are high-fiving, they're giving us hugs, and they're popping champagne right in the room. Yeah. And then others are just like booing us and getting mad, and they want to leave and not work with us maybe. But all jokes aside, this is one of the things we can't control, and we'd rather lean on the conservative side when looking at life expectancy.
Do you find that clients think or acknowledge they're going to live as long as you're suggesting they will, or what's the mind frame in people's minds around how long they're going to live?
Unfortunately, people don't think they're going to live as long as we are seeing and all the data is showing. I mean, quality of life is at an all-time high, so we're seeing that people are living longer lives and longer lives in retirement.
Okay. So if someone's retiring in their 60s and they're going to live to 100, I mean, that's a 30-plus year retirement. How do you factor in expenses? How do you make assumptions around how much people are going to spend and what that looks like?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple of different theories out there of how to look at your expenses. Some people will say that you need about 80% of your pre-retirement dollars to fund retirement. Some people will say 100%, and others actually say it'll cost you more than 100% of your current living expenses. I lean towards about 100%, but again, it's dependent on your individual plan. But some people, I think you may lean higher because you like every day is a Saturday, right?
Oh, on Saturday, I know how much I spend on Saturdays. You go out to lunch, maybe you go play some golf or something, and it's not cheap. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that leads into, I guess, a couple details around the expenses. You hear that some people say, pay off the mortgage. So Dave Ramsey, huge fan, pay off the mortgage, get that thing paid off as you head into retirement. In today's environment, things have shifted and changed a little bit. So how are you coaching your clients on what to do with the mortgage?
That is a great question, and we used to lean heavily towards pay off the mortgage, let's free up that cash flow. But what we're finding is that, the last 10 years, interest rates were at about 0. So it did make sense to pay off these mortgages because you weren't able to find any arbitrage in money market accounts or anything like that. And so a lot of you out there got lucky enough to get that low interest rate, let's call it 3%, and you're locked in at that. And we're seeing that people have access to money market funds that are paying, 5%. So a concept we've been looking at is maybe parking those dollars in the money market, making 5% on your money, and now you're paying your mortgage of 3%, the interest there, so you're making 2% on your money. This is what we're talking about with having your money work for you and work harder for you without you doing anything.
Work harder, not smarter.
That's right.
Financial arbitrage right there. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, that's really the rules of the road have changed. I mean, for 15 years, we had 0% interest on our money market funds. And now that that's shifted, that's an interesting strategy that you bring up.
It's caused opportunities in the portfolios as well. So when we were seeing low interest rates, the bond portions of portfolios weren't really producing any returns. And so we were finding the typical retirees portfolio of 60% stock, 40% bonds, just wasn't getting enough returns as it used to do. So we kind of had to shift a little bit to go 70% stock, 30% bonds, which meant you got higher return, but now you're taking more risk to get the same return you used to get in the 60-40.
Right. Okay. Well, so you're talking about asset allocation, which they say is one of the number one driver of success in a portfolio. So, in your opinion, what is the ideal asset allocation for a retiree?
For a retiree, I mean, if you could, and this will sound crazy as well, but we'll go into more detail, but if you could do a 100% stock, globally diversified portfolio, that's going to be ideal for you. The reason being is this has been proven time and time again that to keep up and beat inflation, to keep your purchasing power strong.
Well, so if I put everything in stocks, one of the other things I hear you talk about a lot is something called the sequence of returns risk. So sequence of returns, meaning if you have a couple of bad years and everything's in stocks and it's down 20 or 30% and you're pulling money out of a portfolio that's going down, it's a fast way to drain your investment account. So if someone's going to be more aggressive on their allocation, how do you protect against the sequence of returns risk?
Right. Well, so let me back up a bit. We don't recommend a 100% stock portfolio a lot of the time, although it could be the better option. And the reason being is because most people can't withstand that range of outcomes. So if the more aggressive your portfolio, the more it could be up, but the more it can be down. And we want to protect on that downside and make sure that you're not making one or two mistakes over your 30 or 40-year retirement.
But if someone's going to be aggressive like that, do you recommend any sort of, if they're not going to have bonds in the portfolio, do you recommend any sort of buffer or reserve to draw on in lean times?
Yeah, so Uncle Nick, we call him Nick Murray, he says that if you can have 2 years of cash available on hand, then you can maybe provide that 100% stock portfolio and get you through.
Okay, so if you're going to be more aggressive in the portfolio, you better have plenty of cash reserves to get through the lean times. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say if there's someone out there that doesn't have the ability to have 2 years worth of cash in a money market fund. Going back to kind of the ideal allocation in the portfolio, how would you approach it for that person?
That's a great question. So now we're starting to look at how much bonds in the portfolio do we need to have, and we kind of line that 1 to 2 year cash amount with the bond section of the portfolio. And this will help you design, so it's designed now you can accomplish your short-term, your mid-term, and long-term goals. Whether you're going into a retirement with down markets and you're having to take distributions, maybe you can now look at different segments of your portfolio to take those distributions.
Okay. So here's a hot topic. I want to touch on inflation here for a minute. A couple years ago, inflation peaked close to 9%. It's now in the 4s. I know from a real world experience, when I go to McDonald's, it's costing me $4.50 to buy a medium fries at McDonald's. It's getting harder to feed a family at McDonald's. And I got 4 kids, so it's getting really expensive.
Well, you're making a mistake already. Okay. You need to go to In-N-Out. The fries are way cheaper there. The burgers, you can get your family set.
I think In-N-Out's better than McDonald's anyways.
There you go.
Double, protein style.
Can't go wrong.
Grilled onions.
So
good.
Chopped chili peppers.
Oh man, that's a culinary experience. But how do you think about inflation in the portfolio and in your financial plans?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So inflation, we call it the silent killer. It's the thing that's going to creep up on you, and most people aren't accounting for this in their financial plan. So what I would do is, we wouldn't want you to put in your plan too high of inflation, because remember, we're looking at 30, 40 years in retirement. I think it would be unwise for you to inflate your cost of living that high, but we also don't want to go too low. So maybe pick 3, 4, maybe 5% in there, or at the beginning of retirement, if you think there's going to be high inflation, have higher inflation, and then run a scenario where it's lower inflation after that.
Okay, so higher for longer in the short term, and then maybe averages out. Okay, so the bottom line is you help people solve for how much they think they're going to spend in retirement. You take that amount and then you increase that over the rest of their life. Do you ever add up the total cost?
Yeah, this is the time where people go running out of our office.
Okay.
No, well, go ahead.
Well, give me an idea. I mean, how much might, if I'm 65 years old and I'm spending, I don't know, 80 to 120 grand a year today, what might my retirement cost, the total cost?
Believe it or not, we're seeing, $7 to $10 million retirement's going to cost. It's a big number.
7 to 10 million. So that's why they go running out of your office.
That's right.
All right.
That's
right. All right. So then to combat that, Social Security is one of the. It's a nice source of income. So if someone is staring down the face of a 7 to 10 million plus cost of retirement, how do you coach them on how to think about Social Security or strategies, timing strategies? How do you think about that?
Well, we spend a lot of time talking about life expectancy. Like at the beginning of this video, we were just saying, people are living longer. And I mean, believe it or not, that you are going to be one of those people that's living into your late 80s, mid 90s, maybe even longer, or at least you or your spouse is going to live that long. So we want to remember Social Security is a over 2 lifetime kind of thing.
What do you mean over 2 lifetimes?
So a misconception with Social Security is that when one of the spouses passes away, you get both benefits. But we need to keep in mind that you actually only get the higher of the 2. And so this is a good planning strategy. I know a lot of people want to take it as early as possible, 62, so they can, live off of it. But maybe a compromise is to have one person take it at 62, maybe the lower benefit, and let the higher of the 2 benefits grow and take it at 70.
So that you ensure whoever lives the longest.
Yeah,
okay,
so then
the
the surviving spouse will take that higher benefit.
Okay.
And also remember, from full retirement age until 70, you're getting an 8% increase each year guaranteed. And we don't say the guaranteed word around here. So this is, yeah.
Right. Well, it's funny, the questions that I get asked, people say, well, what I see happening, people will grab their benefit at 62 because they believe that Social Security is going to go bankrupt. And there's been a lot around the media about Social Security is going bankrupt. My personal opinion is that the program is too important to too many people for politicians to let this fail. I mean, it would be a political career ender for either side of the aisle to let Social Security die. In fact, I believe what they're going to do, they're going to raise taxes. Big surprise there. I think they're going to push out the ages. And they did this back in the 1980s. Full retirement used to be 65. It's now 66 or 67 if you're born after the year 1960. I think they're going to keep pushing those ages out, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see 68, 69, even 70, maybe 72 as full retirement age, just because, like you said, people are living longer and longer. But the sad thing in my mind is the politicians are going to wait till this thing's a national crisis, and then they're going to say, the crisis forced me to raise taxes, or forced us to push through, because those are unpopular things to do. But the truth is, those are the solutions, and I believe we lack the political will right now to do the hard thing. But I think when it's a crisis, I think that's what they're going to do to save the system. So all that to say, anybody making a decision today under the pretense that Social Security is not going to be here in 10 years, I think they're wrong, and I think they're hurting themselves.
Yeah, those are great points. And we have a video here if you want to get more details on the Social Security system and why we think that it can be there, and some of the things that they can change to make it last for generations to come.
Yeah. So Matt, what about those unexpected expenses in retirement? And I think what comes to mind is health care or Medicare or long-term care, the health question. Talk to us about some of those expenses and how you approach them in a financial plan.
So a couple of things here, like we've talked about, people are living longer and they're also wanting to retire earlier. So when I mean earlier, I mean before age 65. And so if you're planning to retire before age 65, another thing that people don't think about are individual health care expenses. And we're seeing $800 to $1,200 a month per person, and these are unexpected or higher expenses than people typically account for.
So if I'm going to retire before 65, and I'm going to go out and purchase medical insurance, it's going to cost me $800 to $1,200 a month, something like that. Okay. So what's the milestone that happens at 65? Why is that the magic year?
So that's when you can switch over to Medicare. So then those other expenses will drop off and you'll switch over to Medicare. But remember, we've got Part A, B, and most likely you'll want to look at a Part C policy as well. So A, you're getting for free if you worked enough years. B, part of that expense is coming out of your Social Security benefit if you've claimed Social Security.
But there's a cost.
Yeah, if you didn't claim Social Security, just know that Part B expense is going to come out of pocket for the time that you're waiting to delay.
Okay.
And then Part C, I mean, we're looking at maybe $400 a month.
Okay, and then what about prescription drugs?
On top of that, maybe another $40 a month.
Okay,
yeah.
So Part D. So you're telling me that Part B, C, and D in your plan, you're going to allocate roughly $400 per person for those three components of Medicare. So if you're married, it's more like $800 per person per month. So that's almost $10,000 a year.
Right.
Okay, so that needs to be factored into the plan.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then what about?
And well, backing up, we were talking about inflation, and then on these expenses, you may want to consider having a higher inflation rate on those expenses going out.
Why?
Healthcare expenses, it's getting out of control, but you have to plan for it.
So you're saying the rate of inflation on healthcare is faster than the rate of inflation on food and gas and other things?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. What about long-term care? You know, when someone they say 3 out of 4, 75% of us are going to need some sort of assistance with activities of daily living at some point in life.
But all of you are going to be the lucky one.
Our audience is the 25%. Yes. All right, so you don't need long-term. Talk to us a little bit about healthcare assistance in the future and your feelings and thoughts around long-term care insurance.
So long-term care insurance is great. Not everyone needs the individual long-term care insurance policies. We've seen how they've had extraordinary increases in prices because the actuaries didn't account for the people living longer. So maybe buying an individual policy isn't the right way to go, but they do now have hybrid policies that you may want to consider. So buying life insurance that have a long-term care rider, just know that you do have to be insurable to get this. And then also they have annuity products that have long-term care riders on them as well. Just weigh out the pros and cons of each and see what makes most sense.
Okay.
And remember, you don't have to transfer all the risk to the insurance company. Even getting just some protection from an insurance company can help out your bottom line a lot.
Something's better than nothing. All right, so for our audience out there, as they're starting to think about building a long-term care expense into their plan, give us a rough sketch of the numbers, maybe some of the assumptions that should go into their planning process.
I would look at where you are in the country to see what the average cost is. Could be anywhere from $4,000 to $12,000 a month, which these numbers are outrageous too. And then maybe accounting for an event for 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
But yeah, just taking a look, we've seen horror stories of just how these types of events can derail a financial plan really quickly.
So in other words, $50,000 to $150,000 per year would be a range today. Run that for 3 years. So you could easily, in today's expense, that could be almost $500,000 depending on what state you live in.
Right.
But that's today's numbers. What if I'm 65 and I'm not going to need long-term care until I'm 85? What do I do with that?
If you're not looking to buy insurance or?
That, or just how do you think about the expense of 20 years from now?
Oh, I mean, yeah, so you got to take the same inflation rate, increase those numbers out and see what it's going to be at that point. But if you don't want to, or if you can't get insurance or don't want to buy long-term care insurance, then maybe if you're 65, start investing in a separate account, a taxable investment account, and maybe be more aggressive in that portfolio, because that could allow you to, knowing that it's for 20, 25 years down the road, grow those assets to help fund a long-term care event.
Okay, so if I want to self-insure and I prefer not to purchase long-term care, just set some money aside and invest it more aggressively. Okay, and then you just kind of back into how much do I need to set aside today and at what growth rate to then grow it to. Okay.
And that prevents some of the use it or lose it that comes with the long-term care insurance. I mean, if you don't use it because you're the lucky one, right? So then it gets to be passed off to the next generation.
Well, and that's where those hybrid policies come in too. If the concern is to use it or lose it, the hybrid policies can solve that too. But I guess it's such a personal decision.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about taxes here. And they say the only two things certain in life are death and taxes. And some might argue that taxes are worse than death. So how do you factor taxes into the overall financial plan? And then are there ways to help lower the tax bill in retirement?
Yeah, you need to start looking at the tax bill sooner than later, maybe 10, 15 years out before retirement, because there are things you can do today to prevent these ticking tax time bombs that you mentioned in the future.
Okay.
So we can start looking at Roth conversions. I mean, unfortunately, if you lose a job in a given year and you're in the lower tax bracket, it may make sense to do Roth conversions there.
Okay.
Your gap years, which are defined of when you retire up until when you're taking those required distributions, which could be 72, 73, or 75, depending on your age.
Yeah.
And so you may want to look at just your cash flow statement to see what those required distributions are going to be.
Yeah.
And if you need to make any tweaks there.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, God. With 15 years out from that, I think about strategies like the mega backdoor Roth strategy, or even the backdoor Roth IRA strategy could help. Mm-hmm. What about folks that don't have 15 years to go? Let's say they're in retirement. Are there ways that they can I know that the required minimum distributions, all those years of saving money pre-tax, can build up these massive, these large account values in your IRAs or your 401ks, resulting in these big required minimum distributions. Are there ways to lower taxes for the person that's already in retirement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're charitably inclined, you may want to look at qualified charitable donations. These you can start as early as age 70 and a half. I know it doesn't align with any of the other numbers we've talked about, but that used to be the required minimum distribution age. So although it won't satisfy your required distribution at that time, you can do in 2024 up to $105,000 of a qualified distribution. And what that is it's taking dollars out of your IRA, 401k, going directly to charity, and then you're not taxed on those dollars.
Okay.
And both you and your spouse can do it. So this could be $210,000 coming out of your qualified accounts.
Okay, which could really lower the, okay.
And the reason it lowers the required distributions is because those are dependent on the account value at the required distribution age. And so there's a formula and they determine, so the bigger the account, the bigger those required distributions are going to be.
Well, and you mentioned something for charitably inclined people. How do you think about a donor-advised fund? What are your thoughts?
Great strategy. It allows you to get that tax deduction up front and then make the decision of where you want to give those charity dollars later.
Yeah.
And you can actually invest them in, so maybe you're being able to give more amounts later down the road.
Okay. Okay. So there's definitely techniques that people can use to help reduce that tax bill.
If you want to get really sophisticated and you want to give large sums of money and kind of get the best of both worlds, you can look at charitable remainder trusts. Yeah. And so some of the features there is that it allows you to get a huge tax deduction up front, and then give to charity if you're charitably inclined, and then also get a stream of income for a number of years during those times.
Oh, so there's a lot of tools.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
it gets very complicated. Be careful, because we've talked about in a number of the videos of that everything just has this ripple effect, and it can cause issues down the road or even tomorrow. Well,
the ripple effect that comes to mind is if the tax bill's too high, if the required minimum distribution is too high, now your Medicare premium goes up because of IRMA.
You could be getting bumped into a higher tax bracket.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So really, like you said, it is complex. It clearly requires a strategy. So we've talked about things like making assumptions on how long you live, making assumptions on how much you're going to spend, and how much those expenses are going to grow over time, and then what you're going to do to combat those expenses, be it the right investment strategy, the right asset allocation, be it the right strategy around Social Security and when you time it, how to maximize it, and then also thinking through things about how to mitigate healthcare expenses in the future, as well as keeping the tax bill lower. Mm-hmm. So we've given you a lot to think about here. Hopefully this was helpful on your journey as you start to think about putting together your own retirement income plan. But thanks for your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I know we covered a lot of ground today, and there's a lot of complexities to this. So if you want help, or you just want a thought partner, or just bounce ideas off somebody, there's a link in the description below to schedule a call with us. And when you schedule a call, you're going to get us on the phone. It's going to be very personalized to your unique situation. We're coaches. We're happy to help, and we want to get to know you.